Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. We are live on Rumble, live on Twitter, live on Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, X America News, carrying the Shannon Joy Show live every day on Twitter. We're live on YouTube, live on Substack, live on Facebook. And of course, you can get the Shannon Joy Show at your leisure anytime, commercial free, on our podcast platforms. We're on every podcast platform. It is so amazing to be with all of you. We're so thankful for all of our platform partners. Inez Annie Cyrus is producing the show today. Annie, thank you so much for being with us. And I see that the live chat here on Rumble is already heating up. Of course, there is so much to talk about today. So let's get to it. First, an Audible. We are changing it up this weekend. I was talking, or this week, at the end of the week. I'm going to be flying to Salt Lake City, Utah tomorrow. After the live show, we are going to stand with Dr. Kirk Moore. I'm so thankful for the producers over at Died Suddenly who have spearheaded the promotion of what I believe the most important story in the United States of America today. We have a medical doctor, Dr. Kirk Moore, a father of two boys who have recently lost their mothers, being persecuted by the federal government, A.G. Pam Bondi, who is working at the pleasure of the president. He is the guy, the buck stops with Donald Trump. Pam Bondi has decided to pursue relentlessly and viciously 35 years in prison this medical doctor who saved lives during the dark days of COVID-19. Parents and citizens came to him desperate to avoid having to be injected with the experimental COVID shots. And Dr. Kirk Moore, taking no money, no payment whatsoever, voluntarily did that with their consent and gave them COVID vaccine cards so that they could get surgeries and keep their jobs and send their children to university or to public school. And he did that for thousands. He is a hero. He honored his Hippocratic oath. He honored the Nuremberg Doctrine. He honored so many of the tenets of an ethical and moral society. And he did that at no charge whatsoever. This case was started by Joe Biden. It's being continued by Donald Trump. And it is the worst case of political persecution of a medical doctor in the world. It goes to trial this week. They started on Monday. Ed Zoll of Died Suddenly has been there all week in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I made the decision yesterday to join him to try to drum up as much coverage of this case as humanly possible. We need every medical doctor, every medical freedom warrior, all of the doctors who stood up and were persecuted themselves in the dark days of COVID-19, those with big platforms to push this out, to stand with Dr. Moore, to make statements, to tweet and retweet and post and write on Substack. We need as many eyes and ears on this case as humanly possible, and there just aren't enough people out there. And so I made the decision to fly out tomorrow after the show. There's a good chance we'll be able to run the live Shannon Joy show on Friday from Salt Lake City, Utah. The producers of Died Suddenly have an amazing studio set up, and we will be able to witness what is happening in the courtroom. We are joining them in a big press conference on Friday. I will be speaking at that. And I want to invite as many of you as humanly possible to come to Salt Lake City, Utah. The flyer is on my Twitter page. Anyone in the medical freedom community, if you're a doctor out there and you have a platform and you want to stand with Dr. Kirk Moore, the invitation is open. And we want to see you. We want to hear from you. So please send this out to everyone you know. Again, the flyer is on my Twitter page. Annie, if you can grab that, maybe we can post the flyer throughout the Shannon Joy show. And we're going to make sure that this case doesn't die in darkness. that the plight of Dr. Kirk Moore is not forgotten, and that we beat this prosecution, that we put so much political pressure on Pam Bondi and on Donald Trump that they can't ignore this, that they are shamed into dropping these charges. And if these charges pursue, shamed into pardoning Dr. Kirk Moore. He deserves a pardon. This is outrageous. On the heels of their protection racket, protecting pimps, pedophiles, pornographers, the likes of Jeffrey Epstein and the Johns that he and Ghislaine Maxwell serviced for so many years, all of them protected now today by this president, Donald Trump, his attorney general, Pam Bondi, and also the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. The response to this has been outrage. We are watching the wheels fall off of the MAGA machine as so many are outraged by the actions of this president. Isn't it amazing to consider the fact that they are protecting grotesque pimps, pedophiles, child rapists, and pornographers? They are protecting that class of politically connected billionaires while throwing under the bus and persecuting a simple medical doctor in the state of Utah who helped his patients. Unbelievable how this DOJ has been weaponized. And the worst part about this, for so many out there who believed in this president, who believed in the Republican Party or the Conservative Party or the MAGA movement, that it's your guys who are spearheading this prosecution, this persecution. Mind-boggling. It's absolutely wrong. And this is why we made the last minute decision to go and stand with Dr. Kirk Moore. I'm not sure that Highwire is covering this. I'm not sure that Children's Health Defense is really covering this. I'm not sure that some of the biggest names and platforms in the medical freedom community are even acknowledging this. We have statements from Dr. Peter McCullough. We have a statement from Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. Thank God. We have a statement from Naomi Wolf, but we need more. We need more coverage, more statements, and more eyes and ears on this case. And we're going to do what we can. I know this show, the Shannon Joy Show, we are small, but we are mighty. It is a small audience, but it is the right audience. And you guys know how to get things done and how to move that dial. And so we're going to try to do that over the next couple days with our friends over at Died Suddenly. Okay, so that's tomorrow. Most likely, we will be doing a live show from right here in the Finger Lakes region of New York State tomorrow. And then I'm going to hop on a plane. We're going to head out to Salt Lake City. And there's a good chance we'll be able to do that live show on Friday as well. But if we don't, just know that we will be providing content. We will be out there, and we're going to do what we can to save Dr. Moore. And he deserves saving. You saw the statement from his son yesterday. Unbelievable. It's a testament to Dr. Moore as a father and a man, what he's taught his boys. An amazing statement. And those boys need their father, okay? They already lost their mother. They need their father. So we're not going to let this happen. Colonial Metals Group, get your gold and silver strategy put together today. This is, again, nothing is changing. So what does that mean? It means that we are still in a situation here in the U.S. With the economy. It's like a train barreling down the track, set on fire, 90 miles an hour with a drunken conductor heading right off a cliff. Like, that's kind of where we are with this economy. And so, especially with the US dollar, our currency, they have taken this as far as they possibly can. Everyone understands this. And this is why gold is now tier 1 status. That's what Ed Dowd was talking about. Gold is money good, meaning you could buy a house with gold. We could see a situation, especially with Texas and Florida now adopting gold and silver as legal tender. That is the first step to their ability to establish a sovereign bank. You have saved your entire life. You're a retiree, and your money is wrapped up in a 401k, IRA, and it's the stock market or even federal government instruments. You have to consider physical gold and silver as a hedge. Doesn't mean you have to go in and go all in on it. It could be a portion, it could be a quarter, less than that, but everyone needs to be hedging right now with physical gold and silver, and also physical gold and silver backing up your retirement. as you guys know, Colonial Metals Group this company is amazing. I trust this company. I know all the primaries. We've been working with them for years, and they take amazing care of this audience. So you're going to want to go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. See if you qualify for $7,500 in free silver. This is an amazing company. They are not going to give you a pressure sell. They're not going to manipulate. They don't do fear selling in any capacity. They just give you all the information that you need and let you make the decision that is right for you and your family. So colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, the SAT123, the satellite phone store, and the amazing team over at this amazing website. It is everything that you need for preparation, everything that you need when the power goes out, when the storm comes, whether it's a generator to keep the power on, solar panels, a satellite phone. If we lose power and the towers go down and 5G, 4G, 3G, it's not working, these satellite phones are absolutely critical in getting in touch with loved ones, and they can actually be a blessing to an entire community. There's so many stories that Tina, the owner and founder of Satellite Phone Store, tells about communities that have one satellite phone that was used to help hundreds of families redirect traffic, direct people to a safe a place or a place to escape a fire or a natural disaster. I mean, the stories are absolutely amazing. And not only can you protect your own family, but you can also be a blessing to your community when you are prepared. Please go to sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. That is my page. And the folks at Satellite Phone Store always have amazing deals for the Shannon Joy audience. 10% off with that promo code JOY. That's 10% off your entire purchase with the promo code JOY. Everything that you need when the lights go out. The Faraday collection, the satellite phones, the generators, you name it, they have it. And we're so thankful for everything that they do for this show. So sat123.com/joy. Without further ado, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome into the Joy Virtual Studio a hero. And I cannot believe that I didn't hear about Dr. Kirk Moore earlier. I can't believe this is the first time that I'm talking to you, Dr. Moore. And that just goes to show you how some of the bravest warriors, even in the medical freedom movement, are suppressed and their stories are suppressed. As you guys know, Dr. Kirk Moore is being tried by the federal government and threatened now with 35 years in federal prison for his act of heroism during the dark days of COVID-19. His trial is coming up in July. We're going to be following it here on the Shannon Joy Show. And today we're going to hear his story. Dr. Kirk Moore, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Thanks for being with us.
Well, hi, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Man, again, I cannot believe that I haven't heard your story, but I'm glad that you reached out to me last week and we became acquainted. For those of you who know Dr. Clayton Baker and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, another persecuted doctor, they've been on this show multiple times. They're very close with Dr. Moore as well. And your story is extraordinary. So let's just let you tell the story in your own words about you as a doctor during the dark days of lockdown and then the rollout of the poison COVID shots, what you decided to do to help your patients, and then how the government came down on you like a ton of bricks. Truly extraordinary story. Let's start at the beginning. Let's go back to lockdown 2020 and the rollout of the shots. Where were you and what was your role in this story?
Well, 2020, January, February, March 2020, I was just doing my job. I'm a plastic surgeon. I specialize in cosmetics and, breast augmentation, tummy tucks. But, obviously we're all hearing about it, hearing about all of these deaths that are happening, and you're watching the news and you're seeing kind of the supposedly all of the deaths and bodies piling up in China. And, now all of a sudden we have a case you see all of this stuff going on in Italy and Spain. And then it just transitions. First cases are in Seattle. in a nursing home, and then all of a sudden New York has just hit really hard. We in Utah, and then you start hearing about kind of all of the shutdowns happening. Um, and I had no issues with any of it. I just, I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, this is really bad. So middle of March, we start hearing about, potential shutdowns here in Utah. Um, and I'm a single dad raising my two kids and by myself. And so I couldn't imagine, them not having a dad. And so I shut my office down March, I don't know, 16th, 17th, came home from surgery on a Tuesday afternoon. I don't remember exactly what it was that I saw, but something else kind of, I don't say spooked me, but I
Sure.
just said, I don't, I don't want to be part of this. I don't need to be exposed to people that might potentially be sick. If this is really that bad, I certainly don't want to bring it home. So I called up my office manager and said, hey, we're done. Just shut the office down. We're going to get shut down next week anyway. So let's just call it. Um, on Monday, that following Monday, we had a shutdown. I mean, they called it, I think, a day or two after us. And, and in retrospect, you just look back on this and you're just kind of like, how is it that, they can plan a shutdown?
Right.
So, anyway, so I started doing all kinds of research. Now I'm just sitting at home, probably on the same laptop that I'm talking to you on, probably in the same place, and just doing all my own research and start reading about everything. And within, I don't know, it didn't take long a day or two, 24 hours, 48 hours, I had completely done a 180. And
Mm,
I was just like, this is all fake. None
wow.
of this makes any sense. And, and then you start hearing about during this shutdown time, we were shut down from, I think, I don't know, 23rd or 24th of March, something like that, until the end of April. Um, and so during that time, I just started treating people. I had all kinds of friends, family, patients of mine calling, texting, friends calling their friends and texting. And so I just started treating people with hydroxychloroquine, Zithromax, steroids, vitamin C, vitamin D. Then they confiscated all of the hydroxychloroquine. So I started going to other options, which were kind of more over the counter options with um, ECGC and quercetin, as per kind of Dr. Zelenko's kind of protocol that he came
Right.
up with.
Right.
And then, I was able to kind of finally get some access to, some hydroxychloroquine prescriptions and everything. And so I just, that was my, that was my spring, summer of 2020. Um, and I kept treating people all the way through that whole year. I mean, I don't treat people now. I don't get really that many calls about it, but I'm still treating, still treating people up until 6 months ago. Um,
Amazing. Amazing.
so anyway,
How
that
many
was my
how
early
many people
exposure.
how many people would you say you treated in that time with these life-saving protocols? And did you lose anyone?
So I never had a hospitalization. I never had a death.
Not surprised.
I had some people that called me with oxygen saturations in the high 80s from home that I managed to treat at home and got better within 24 to 48 hours.
Wow.
Um, I did house calls. I started IVs on patients and had their wife, who was a nurse, treat them at home on steroids. I did all of that. And how many did I treat? Gosh, I was at the peak of this in the spring, summer, fall of 2020. I was probably getting 10 calls a day.
Wow.
So
Yep.
I probably treated, my rough numbers are 800 people, and most of them I just treated. I probably know just some of them by their first and last name, called in prescriptions for them,
Yeah.
just to, keep them out of the hospital. Um,
Amazing.
so that was,
Imagine that though. Imagine that. That is what a wartime doctor would do, really. You would, a plastic surgeon has a thriving practice. This is your bread and butter, but your community needed you. And so you completely shifted gears and just treated patients, which is what I would imagine doctors should do. That you did your research, you used your expertise and your experience, you used a little bit of your own common sense, and you were able to help your community. And imagine if even a fraction of the medical doctors out there in the country did that instead of shoving people into the hospitals for the COVID kill protocols and the stay home until you're blue in the face and you can't breathe anymore
Right.
protocols that came from the CDC. We would be in likely a much different scenario. We probably wouldn't have needed the rollout of Operation Warp Speed and the kill shot, which is what I call it. But of course, Dr. Moore, they did need people to be dying on COVID floors, and they needed the psyop and the propaganda, because how else would they justify every American forced or coerced into accepting a shot against their will or without proper informed consent? And that leads us to the more interesting part of your story, right? They had all the justification they needed, right? The fear, propaganda, and the PR campaign had set in. And now the only way for you to go back to your regular life, the only way that will let you out of your lockdown as is if you accept the COVID shot. And I really want to I want us all to remember COVID and COVID lockdowns and what people experienced, because as you know, in the first half of this show, we're talking about now what I believe to be another psyop, another fear campaign that is going to move us into a space where they're going to give us that fatal choice, right? If you want peace again in the United States of America, if you want the riots to end, if you want everything to end, well, then just accept the digital ID. Just accept the digital currency. Like, you can see how there are parallels here. And that's why I want to take our time with this. So your thoughts on that, Dr. Moore, and then, you know, this next phase where they've prepared us for the fatal choice. You know, what were your thoughts then? And then what type of discussions were you having with your patients and community members?
Well, the two things that kind of really raised the flags for me that were just huge red flags was the first time when, you know, you're getting the narrative that there's no treatment. We can't treat somebody that has the flu. And that's essentially what it was. There was no difference between the symptoms that people were having. Yeah, they were making a big deal about the loss of taste and, you know, of taste and smell, but that happened with people with the flu.
Right, right.
And, you know, but they just kind of, you know, swept that under the carpet. There's no treatment. You can't do anything about it. You know, if your sats are in the 90s and you're a little short of breath, then just go home. And like you said, if you know, if you're blue in the face and you can't breathe, call an ambulance, and we'll admit you to the hospital, and then we'll kill you with remdesivir. You know, so that was, you know, to me, that was the first red flag, because there is nothing in medicine that we delay treatment on.
Right.
I mean, if a woman comes to me and has a lump in her breast, I don't say, hey, why don't you just go home, and when it's eroding through the skin, then I'll treat you for cancer. You know, and that's kind of the analogy that I've used for years now, because it fits into my, you know, what I used to do an awful lot of, which was breast reconstruction surgery. And so I knew a lot about that. But that was the analogy to me. That was just kind of like, okay, so that's what you're telling people. So people that are primary care doctors who would treat these symptoms regularly, whether it be with Advil, Tylenol, flu medication, Flumidine, you know, maybe a touch of steroids, some antibiotics, you know, all kinds of stuff. They would, you know, we would treat people. You wouldn't just say, no, I'm told that I can't treat you now, so go home. So that was the first red flag. And then the other one was the vaccines. You know, like we're not going to get back to normal until everybody's got a shot in the arm. And you know, my personal history, I got shingles from a hepatitis B vaccine when I started medical school.
Wow.
So I was very cynical of vaccines in general. My daughter is only partially vaccinated, born in 2003. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer per, you know, terminal, you know, but she ended up being hospitalized at 2 years old with some abdominal pain. They couldn't figure out what it was. There was nothing that showed up that was abnormal. But they wanted to take her gallbladder out. And I was just like, at 2 years old. And so I was just like, no, thanks, we're leaving. And so then my son was born a couple of years after that, and he hasn't had one vaccine. Well, I can't say that he hasn't had. He's had a yellow fever shot in order to go to Africa with me on some humanitarian trips. But that's it. So, you know, so when I'm hearing this, so I'm a little skeptical of vaccines anyway. I'm not going to certainly put them in everybody just for the sake of putting them in everybody, but that's what they wanted to do. And I was just like, that's just not right. But no, nobody was forcing anybody. No one was cursing anybody. I was talking to all my friends, making sure that nobody was getting these shots. I was telling everybody, hey, look, let's just, like, it might work, right? It might
Mhm.
be something. I doubt it, but I'm really skeptical. But let's just wait. And then you just start seeing, okay, wait a minute, where are the studies? What are the ingredients? What's in it? Um, the 95%, 94% on Moderna, and you look at those numbers and you're just kind of like, okay, nothing is 95% effective.
Right.
Um,
Right.
we
It
we
started
had,
at 100%, if you don't
yeah,
recall. Remember
right,
the
right,
speaking of, I mean, just
yep,
blatant propaganda. They said it was 100% effective, which
right. Well, that only
immediately
lasted
you're
for a
like,
few days. That only
right,
lasted for a few days, and then they
right.
said, oh, here's the data.
I have a
Uh,
long memory.
it's a 95%
Yeah.
effective, and then Moderna came out the next day and said ours is 94% effective, or vice versa.
Yeah.
um, and so I'm just like, we've been trying to get a vaccine, quote unquote vaccine, for cancer for 100 years. We've
Mm,
been trying to get a vaccine for HIV for the last 40 years.
yeah.
And we have this coronavirus that has been, living symbiotically with humanity for, since the beginning of time.
Right.
And all of a sudden we're going to have a curative um, vaccine in something in less than 9 months. And so I just call bullshit.
Yeah.
And that was, that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah. And then, we all experienced the rollout of the coercion campaign, which was deployed primarily by private institutions, large corporations, college universities, large hospital systems, according to recommendations that were coming from the health administration and the Biden administration. We had some mandates for military personnel and pilots coming from the federal government. But for the most part, it was a massive coercive campaign. They really didn't get to the forcing Americans, down on the mat and shoving a vaccine in their arm against their will. But they certainly began to test that out. And you saw the winter of death speech from President Biden, and the blood red background that looked like something out of Nazi Germany, which was quite disconcerting. And this was
Or
when it got
Bolshevik Russia, right?
yeah, right, exactly. And it began to be very frightening. And I remember that was probably the scariest time for me as a reporter, as I was watching the uptake of the vaccine tick up and up and up as people were falling for those coercive measures. We are hitting 30%, 40%, 50%. And I knew, I'm like, if we get anywhere near like 95%, it's over. They'll crush the unvaccinated. They will take, if they get this population. And so it was very important to many in the medical freedom movement to put as much information out there as possible about the ingredients, about the adverse events, about the Pfizer papers that we were beginning to understand, the preclinical trials that gave the justification for the emergency use authorization, the VAERS reporting, how bad is my batch? There was an enormous amount of data that was coming out, and we were pushing that data out. But at the same time, there was a subset of the population, doctors, nurses, hospital workers, pilots, people who worked for education institutions and some large corporations, were being slapped with mandates from their employers. You cannot come to work. You lose your livelihood. You lose your benefits if you do not inject yourself with this shot against your will. And that is when you had to make a very difficult decision, Dr. Moore. Can you talk about that moment and what you were faced with and why you decided to take the extraordinary action? And I would say, in the vein of Dr. Martin Luther King, when he wrote from the letter from Birmingham jail, and he said, this was a letter to pastors, and they said to him, well, you're breaking the law. And he said, it is our duty as Christians to refuse to obey unjust laws. It is our duty as Christians to violate unjust laws that go against our natural God, right? And our fundamental fundamental, God-given natural rights. And so you made that decision um, to help your fellow community members maintain their jobs and remain in compliance with some of these unconstitutional and unjust mandates. But can you tell the audience that part of your story?
Well, so the first thing that came to me was the kids. Um,
Mhm.
and that was kind of, the kids had already been out of school. We're doing online classes. Um, the, the vaccines were kind of coming on board. They were available for 12-year-olds and over. There was discussion about, when they were going to be available for 5 to 12-year-olds, which meant basically every kid in school. But there was also the discussion with high school kids and college kids that were going to be required to have this in order to just even attend school.
Oh,
Um,
horrible.
and even to do online school. In other words, you couldn't even enroll in a class, in an online class, and not prove that you had been vaccinated.
Wow.
And so here in the state of Utah, I had a vaccine exemption for my kids for school. And once you fill out a vaccine exemption, it lasts throughout their whole education from,
Right.
I don't know, sixth or seventh grade on, unless you change that. And both of my kids had gone to school on vaccine exemptions. But now my kid, my son was going to be going into high school, and my daughter was going to be going off to college. And so they were going to require that both of them be vaccinated in order to attend classes. And I started hearing the same concerns and complaints from my friends, my family, my staff, my patients. Um, and so I decided to open up a vaccine clinic, um, and provide COVID vaccines to my patients. And just to people that had the same concerns and same issues, and were worried about the rollout of these vaccines and the mandates on the vaccines. Um, and so that was kind of the beginning of it, which was parents bringing their kids in to to quote unquote be vaccinated, so they could then go off to school. Bless
So
you.
let's lay this out very clearly for the audience so that they understood. Dr. Kirk Moore, and I love this, right? And was this legal or illegal? I guess that's what is going to come out in this court case. At the very least, there's no way that you should be faced with 35 years in prison at all. There's no way that the federal government should be involved in this and persecuting you. But Dr. Kirk Moore opened up a vaccine clinic, and at no charge, he would inject patients with their consent and their knowledge of what was in the injection with saline, and then fill out one of the god awful, horrifying vaccine cards, a little cardboard piece of paper, so that the child could attend school or university or college, or the adult could attend work, right? And so this is what you're charged with. You open up this clinic. Now tell me about the clinic and what happened. And how they got wind of what you were doing, and then what you have gone through. I mean, we'll get to
Yeah.
the persecution under the Biden administration and then now the Trump administration. But what did that clinic look like, and what were you doing on a daily basis?
Well, so it got so busy that we ended up having to kind of set times for our clinic times. So Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 1 to 5, we would set up our clinic. Um, and I hired an employee back who had actually previously worked for me, to come back and work for us, and had her do the vaccine injections or COVID injections, or saline shots,
Right,
on on those afternoons.
right,
And again, like you said, we didn't charge anything. We asked, I wasn't. I did this for oh gosh, I don't know, when did we start? May, June of 2021 until October, November of 2022. Um, and at some point in late 21, I had a lot of people that were asking, "Hey, you're doing all of us a service. can we pay you? And I'm like, no, I don't want to get paid. Um, and but if you'd like, I'm I go to these meetings for this nonprofit organization. So if you would like to donate to this facility, I'd really appreciate you donating.
Okay.
Um, and so that's kind of how that started. So we were asking, for people to donate. The government's going to make a big stink about that because they're going to say, well, you made us show our donations, you made us show an orange when you showed up, and that wasn't really for verification of the donation. That was actually for verification that they'd been through our screening process.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so one of my neighbors, who is kind of one of my current co-defendants, said, "Hey, we have to protect you, Dr. Moore, and so." um, let's set up a system where we can kind of screen people, make sure that they understand what's happening, and what they need to do and how they need to go about this process. And so that's kind of how we set it up. Like I
Was
said, the
this
government's.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Was this like a secret operation, like an underground railroad type of situation where there were code words and you didn't really say it out loud, or were you kind of operating in like full light? Like I'm, wink wink nod nod, this is happening. Like how did that work?
Well, I wasn't advertising it. I wasn't, putting out bulletins and flyers
Right.
and messages on our social media campaigns and everything else that we were doing it. Um, and it was just a word of mouth scenario from
Got it.
one family member to another, to friend, to other people. I mean, you mentioned the military earlier. I probably saved the jobs of, you know, dozens of military, personnel. We have two military bases here in Utah, one Camp Williams,
Wow.
which is right across the valley, and one up north. And
Mhm.
so I had a lot of military personnel. And then I started getting people that were, trying to go see their family that were in hospitals or in nursing homes who were dying, and they wouldn't be allowed in unless they'd been
Wow.
vaccinated. So they couldn't even go see their family members. I mean, you see videos and pictures of this, of, people in bubbles,
Horrifying.
inside of, kind of like tapping on the window and saying hi to mom,
Right.
kind of thing. So, so there were a lot of patients that were just trying to get in to see family members on their, on and to take their last dying breath with family holding their hand. Um, and then the other ones were like I said, the kids. But I probably had a half dozen transplant patients that weren't going to be allowed to get transplants because they were taken off the transplant list without a COVID shot.
Oh my word.
Um, and my very last patient was a kidney transplant, and we had already shut down our clinic, and she was begging to come in and get a vaccine card so that she could get put back on, to get a kidney transplant. Diabetic, with end stage renal disease, and they weren't gonna allow her to have a kidney transplant. So
Oh
um,
my word. Oh my word. That
anyway.
is, yeah, well, there are questions. How did you get around the lot number situation? Because you had to put a lot number onto the cards. And well, let's ask that first. I want to ask you that first. And then I want to ask you, did anyone who received the cards get in trouble from the government? Did they get a crackdown? So how did you work around the lot number? Because that's one of the areas where the federal government is trying to attach some type of monetary situation here because of what they deemed the value of each vaccine was. But can you tell the audience about how you filled out the cards and how you got how you um, navigated the lot numbers?
Well, we ordered vaccines from the Utah Health Department.
Got it.
So they came to us with lot numbers, whether they were Moderna or Pfizer or J&J. And so we would just write those numbers down of the lot numbers that we had. So that's kind of how we obtained, those,
Got it.
because I didn't know what the numbers were. Obviously I could have probably gotten on the internet and, and gotten some because people had their cards and posted them. There's a
Sure.
there's a guy from New York and a guy from Utah that sold these on eBay. They would go and print the cards at Kinko's or FedEx or whatever and sold them on eBay for $10 a piece, sold 140,000 of them.
Ah!
So they made $1.4 million, and they just took a plea deal last year for a year in jail and a $40,000 fine. Um,
Wow.
and so
So those guys get a year in jail, $40,000 fine, yet you took
Right.
no
And
money whatsoever.
they made $700,000 each, off of
And they never had to
selling
pay
the
that
product.
back?
And they never had to pay that back. No.
Okay, so just so the audience understands here, and we've heard stories about this in the dark days of COVID, that there were black market cards and there were black market businesses, and frankly, I think it's great. Um, because again, it is our duty to disobey unjust laws. But here you have a situation where Dr. Kirk Moore set up a free clinic where he took no profit whatsoever. The vaccines were provided to him at no charge from the Department of Health in Utah, and he injected patients with saline so that they could avoid the poison toxic shots, therefore upholding, in my opinion, also his Hippocratic oath to first do no harm. And they would have been harmed severely if they were denied school and livelihood and education and a surgery and the ability to be with a loved one when they were going to pass away. So, what I'm saying here, Dr. Moore, is I do believe there is an incredible ethical consideration that was taken here by you, just by the nature of your not taking compensation for this. Can you tell the audience how you justified this to yourself and employees and people who are coming in terms of the ethics of it? How did you work that out in your mind? Because there would be many who would say, you broke the law and you never should have broken the law. And so, yeah, we feel kind of bad for you. And yeah, it's not fair, but you put yourself in that position. What would you say to them?
Well, so my one position that I've said all along is, what law did I break?
Okay.
There is no law. There was no COVID law passed. There was nothing that said that I had to do whatever the government says that I need to do. There's no law that says that. The government is trying to kind of put me into this fraud side, like you said, saying that I absconded or I misused or I purloined, $28,800 worth of product that they gave me for free, and that I had a contract with them to give it in such a way. So I think that's that's the law side of it. Okay.
Right.
The ethical side of it wasn't that hard for me. I'm doing what my patients wanted me to do after a full discussion of what it is. I have no ingredient list. I don't know what this product is.
Right.
There are no toxicity studies. There are no carcinogenic studies. There are no mutagenic studies. There's nothing out there. This is something that was studied for a total of 2 months. And the control group was terminated because they found that it had 95% effectiveness. Once the numbers came out and it showed that actual effectiveness was less than 1% by an absolute risk reduction, then that in and of itself should show that, hey, this is just ridiculous. There was no benefit. There's nothing out there. You look at Brooke Jackson's study and what it was that she was, that she's tried to present in Texas, that's been thrown out at least twice now. And you just look at all of everything that's behind it. You mentioned the ethical side of it. The AMA Code of Ethics says that a physician is supposed to take care of the patient that's in front of them. Okay. That's your oath. My oath is, if you were my patient, I would take care of you. You tell me what your concerns are. You tell me, what your symptoms are, and we come up with a plan. I explain to you what the pros and cons of that are, and then you and I come up with a plan on how to treat you. Okay. And I'm not treating you for your husband or your kids or your neighbors or anybody else. I'm treating you that's in front of you. Okay. That's in front of me, and we come up with a plan. So that's the Code of Ethics. There's also a known issue with medicine and the legal system. And the AMA Code of Ethics says two things. We know that there is going to be a conflict between ethical and moral medical treatment of people and the law at times.
Right.
And so as a physician, your duty is to try to do what you can to do both, to take care of your patient and to kind of reconcile the law. So I did. I went to the state of Utah. I went to the House. I went to some of the Senate subcommittees. I testified in some of these committee hearings to try to get laws changed, mandate laws, mask mandates, COVID mandates, shot mandates, and we were successful. in the state of Utah, we were able to pass laws that reversed the mask mandates, that made it actually to some degree a finable offense for businesses to require COVID vaccines in order to go to work and to go to school. And so that was my first step. The second
Mhm.
step out of this is that if you cannot change that during the time that you're doing, you are, by ethics and moral values, you are required to take care of your patient in front of you, not to abide by, like you said, to abide by the law. So where's the AMA in all this? That's their code of ethics. I don't see them standing behind me and and trying to support the medical values and ethics that they claim on their website is one of their bastions of health and what
Right.
physicians need to do.
And
So
and you were given no recourse either. So, as a physician, as a medical doctor, even according to the Hippocratic Oath, you are required to give each patient informed consent, meaning
right,
they need to understand what is in the injection, what are the what are the ingredients, potential adverse events, allergic reactions, any type of counterindication with other medications. I mean, these are necessary steps as a doctor that you need to take to ensure that if you are injecting someone with a substance, they understand the cost benefit analysis. That's the essence of informed consent. So
right,
even if you were a medical doctor operating a vaccine clinic and you had no intention of injecting patients with saline and filling out a card, when you got the product, if you're not given the ingredients list, if you have no studies to look at, like it would be a violation of the law, the higher law, right, that is above the AMA and above the PrEP Act and above any of the other state laws, and that is to provide your patient with informed consent. So even in that, in that scenario, you absolutely did the right thing.
yeah. Well, I mean, you can't give informed consent if you don't know what's in the product.
Right.
You can't give
Exactly.
informed consent. You can't give informed consent if you don't have any evidence or data of what it is that you're actually, what the results are going to be of what it is that you're giving. And
Right.
by the time this is all rolled out, I mean, Mary Talley Bowden talks about it. There were 19,000 complaints to VAERS,
Wow.
by the end of January of 2021, and there were 700 deaths on VAERS that were
Yes.
reported due to the COVID vaccine in 1 month. Okay, so for them to say that they didn't know what was going on, Del Bigtree put up with that VSafe data with Aaron Siri and everything else, and that chart that he put up and discussion. They had a couple of shows on it where they talked about what the risks were, and I think it was 31% of people complained of pain or complained of problems and were unable to go to work and or had to go see a doctor within the first week of getting a COVID vaccine, and yet you have Anthony Fauci and Rochelle Walensky and Francis Collins, all these people on TV during that time being interviewed. There's a 5 alarm fire going on behind them, and they're saying, "Oh, we're not seeing any. We're not seeing any kind of. There's no red flags. We're not seeing any
Amazing.
messages. We're not seeing anything. Anything that's telling us that we need to halt this or go back." And they're just blatantly lying to us.
Horrifying.
Um,
Horrifying.
and it's just and nuts. And then, like you said, I mean, so now after all that we know and after all that we've been through, and after everything that we're going through, the uptake on COVID vaccines is less than 20% across the country on any kind of boosters. The uptake in kids is less than 10%. So what does that tell you? That tells you
Right.
that 80 to 90% of this country doesn't believe in this technology and doesn't believe in what it is that's happening. And yet we have a federal government, both on the Biden side and the Trump side, that is still pursuing this case to try to, basically tyrannically tell doctors and physicians that unless you do what it is that we tell you to do,
Right.
regardless of what those risks are, we are going to punish you. So watch out.
We are talking to Dr. Kirk Moore. He is facing 35 years in federal prison. He's being persecuted by the federal government, not the state government, first under the Biden administration and tragically the Trump administration under Pam Bondi is continuing with this case, which goes to trial in just about a month. In case you're wondering, yes, there have been advocacy letters sent to Robert Kennedy Jr. He is aware of this persecution of Dr. Kirk Moore. There have been letters sent to the Trump administration and members of the Justice Department to make them aware of this persecution. And this administration, the Trump administration, is continuing with this case. We're going to be watching this extensively. When we come back, we're going to get to the details of the case, what they are charging Dr. Moore with, and how you can help them. As you guys have seen, there is a give, send, go button. It was underneath Dr. Moore's photo here in the interview, and it is also listed in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show. This is one of the cases that we are going to continue to watch. We'll be back in a moment to continue this discussion right here on the Shannon Joy Show. I also love Native Path Complete Protein, also 41% off. Go to nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy. Native Path Complete Protein /joy, 100% grass-fed beef protein, not whey, not soy, not plant-based, okay? They don't do that over at Native Path. Only the best for the Joy audience. This is to rebuild strength, maintain muscle support, a fast metabolism with absolutely no bloat whatsoever, because this is the cleanest product, the highest quality product, protein product you can get on the market. It is 110 calories, 20 grams packed with protein, and 0 sugar, dairy-free, no soy, no gluten. This is an amazing product. 41% off. Next week, we're going to feature some of the Joy family recipes. We use complete protein every day at my house. The kids love the chocolate flavor. Go to nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy. That's nativepathcompleteprotein.com/joy to get your exclusive 41% off discount. This is just for the Joy audience, but it is going to end soon. So make sure you go to that website today. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. We're talking to Dr. Kirk Moore. He is being persecuted by the United States federal government under the Trump administration for his adherence to the Hippocratic Oath during the dark days of COVID and taking care of his patients. I have 2 documents here. April 23rd, 2025. This was sent to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services, to Stephanie Spear, his Deputy Chief of Staff. Dear Secretary Kennedy and Deputy Chief Spear, I'm writing on behalf of Michael Kirk Moore, MD, to express urgent concern regarding the politically motivated federal charges currently being pursued against him. These charges, in both character and context, appear to fall directly within the scope and intent of the Department of Justice's weaponization work group established under Attorney General Pam Bondi. And this is, looking for their recommendation that this case is dropped. We also have on June 9th, 2025, to Dr. Andrew Huff. Again, in context of this case, we are respectfully requesting that you review the above referenced action for the purpose of recommending to President Donald J. Trump that he prospectively grant a presidential pardon to Michael Kirk Moore, Jr., MD, who has been charged by the United States of America for his alleged participation in providing signed COVID-19 vaccine cards. He's being charged in a number of ways, but he is based on the charges brought by the U.S., he is facing a maximum possible sentence of 35 years in prison. This is astounding. This is one of just a sampling of outreach to this administration on behalf of Dr. Kirk Moore. Again, he has earned support from Dr. Clayton Baker, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, and hopefully more in the medical freedom movement. I cannot believe, Dr. Moore, that I did not know about your case. I cannot believe. Thank you so much for reaching out to me on Twitter last week and making me aware of this. I must confess, every day is like a fire hose in my face, and there's so much injustice out there that it's hard to get to all of this. But this is imminent. This is over in the next 30 days. Can you speak to the audience about the nature of the charges against you, and brought originally under the Biden administration and the Biden Department of Justice now tragically continued under the Trump administration, and also, your optimism after the election of Trump. I think that you were probably very excited to receive a presidential pardon. He was handing them out like, like candy to children in the first 30 days of his administration. They looked at your case and they said no. And I want to know what you think about that. But let's just do the nuts and bolts of the nature of the charges and what you're facing right now.
So the charges originally were fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud because there's more than one person involved, and counterfeiting. They accused us of having made money. So all of their charges started off with, whatever the charge was or whatever it was that they claimed that we did, line by line, for the benefit of Plastic Surgery Institute of Utah and/or Dr. Moore. In the superseding indictment, which they put out in January of this year, they added a charge of destruction of government property, but they removed any reference to having made money. So it's really an interesting, well, they don't have any data or evidence to support that. So that it'd be a really hard thing to follow, for them to kind of prove that. Mm-hmm. So, but fraud because because they're claiming that I misused a government product that was given to me for free. But again, the federal government never gave me anything. Right. Everything that I received was through the Utah Health Department.
Right.
All my communication was through the Utah Health Department.
Right.
And we've asked for all kinds of information. Nothing that we have gotten shows anything that we signed or that we were involved with that had anything to do with the CDC or the FDA or anybody.
Wow.
So
do you know what their justification is? How are they? That's a really important point. The federal government used a lot of coercive methods to get the states to deploy the recommendations and the mandates and all of the things. And so you're saying you never even had contact with anyone in the federal government. This is all through the states. Is Utah suing you or charging you with any?
No, this is again, and that's where part of our argument is that this is a jurisdictional issue. I don't think the federal government has jurisdiction over me. They don't have jurisdiction over my license. They can't revoke my medical license.
And you're practicing, aren't you?
So I am.
Unbelievable.
And so so they can't revoke my medical license because I don't have a federal license. Everything is done through the state, and like I said, all of our contact was done through the state, and our product was delivered from another third party. So part of what I've been saying all along is, if I get on Amazon and I order a product from, I don't know, Hexclad, as a pot, and
love those pots, by the way.
Yeah, and I'm just, I hate using anybody's name, but that's just the first thing that popped to mind. Yeah. So I order a product through Amazon. And then Hexclad comes back and says, well, hey, Dr. Moore isn't using those pots appropriately. We should sue him. Right. And on top of that, we, should put them in jail because this is the way our pots need to be used. Right. And that's, a very similar analogy. The government's going to say, well, I signed a contract and my contract says that, yeah, but my contract that I signed, shows that I had a contract with the Utah Health Department, not the federal government. So I don't know how they can intercede in that and do that. But they're claiming $28,000 worth of fraud. It's a felony offense. Anything over that's $1,000. Because we did it with multiple people, it's a conspiracy. And then because I signed the cards and didn't give them the actual product that I claimed that they gave them, then that's what they do it. And then destruction of government property because I didn't, do with it appropriately. They're trying to claim that I told my employees, to get rid of the product after we were indicted. We were indicted probably 3-4 months after the last delivery of any product that we had taken in delivery anyway. And so if we had any product that was still in the office, it would have been long expired and would have needed to be destroyed anyway. So I don't know how that would have worked. But anyway, that's
product is the COVID jab. Right?
Yes.
The jabs.
Yeah.
The jabs.
So
yeah. Okay.
Shannon, one other thing real quick, and then I'll let you, and I know because we have time. We actually went to the weaponization work group and they looked at our case. They responded to us within an hour. They told us that we needed to have our acting U.S. attorney say that he wasn't going to, revoke the case or dismiss the case. And so when we got notice from the acting U.S. attorney, we went back to them. They said, okay, we'll look at it. And then I think it was 2 weeks. They came back and said, we're not going to intervene. Thank you very much.
Wow. Now,
So,
who was that? Who signed that letter?
I think it was the Deputy Attorney General's chief counsel. And I don't know what
Okay.
his name was. It's an Italian last name.
So you have gone through all of the proper channels to alert this administration, the attorney general, about this case, and they have seen it, they have reviewed it over the course of 2 weeks, and they came back and said, nope, we are going to pursue the exact same course of action as the Biden administration and their attorney general. Is that what I'm to understand here?
Yes. I went to RFK came into town and I went to meet him. I was not able to kind of sit down and meet him, but I did meet his deputy chief of staff, that's Stephanie Spear.
Yep.
I handed her all those documents that that you have and that you're looking at. And then RFK actually posted on Twitter through his own personal account that that I'm a hero, and that I shouldn't be persecuted or prosecuted, something along those lines. I can send you that actual link.
Please do.
But he did it on his own personal, not on his government account. He was here to talk about Utah having taken fluoride out. It's a state law. So anyway.
So Bobby Kennedy Jr. tweeted out on behalf of Dr. Kirk Moore, called you a hero from his personal account, and now in a very powerful position at HHS with the ear of the president and the ability to put this case in front of millions upon millions of Americans. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. That is unbelievable. We have to wrap up in about a minute, Dr. Moore. Can you tell the audience when the case is going to end, like when you're going to go to court, and what they can do to help you and get all the information? We're running out of time, so I'll have you on again at some point. And we'll get into more details about the charges. But that's outrageous. Guys, remember the name Dr. Kirk Moore. We need to push this out into the medical freedom community. We need to ask and ask and ask and ask. This is outrageous. But how can people help you? And when is your court date coming up?
So July 7th is our court date. That's the beginning of our trial. Jury selection, I think, starts that day.
Okay.
I have a Give Send Go, givesendgo.com / I think it's stand for more with a number 4. And then there's also a fundraiser account, FUNDRAZR, I think it is. So either one of those, any help you can, benefit us with is really appreciated. It's crunch time. I have to hire 2 attorneys because my business was indicted too. So I have to have an attorney that's going to be there just to represent my attorney. He's just going to sit in court for 8 hours a day, for who knows how long, 2-3 weeks, just to sit there and listen. And I have to pay him for his time. So
unbelievable. All right. We need to pour out for Dr. Kirk Moore. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. We will have you on again 100%. Okay. And we're not going to let go of this case at all.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Shannon.
Oh, I so appreciate you, guys. I appreciate you. True hero doctor. Give, send, go for Dr. Kirk Moore. Thank you for your heroism and what you did for so many during the dark days of COVID. Let's consider supporting Dr. Moore, and we will be following this case. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.